Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I wasn't going to cover this today, but I kind of knew that stuff. I didn't have anything on my, my toolbar or whatever it is. I didn't have any tabs open where I had any stuff to do with Charlie Kirk and his wife Erica. Erica with a K. My wife just texted me, and I had misspelled her name with a C. But at least I didn't call her Monica. I don't know any Monicas. The only Monica I know of is from Friends, and I haven't watched Friends or thought about Friends in years. So I don't know why, whatever. Um, anyways, so I wasn't going to cover this, but, I'm going to start off where I left off with my last video. And why would Turning Point and particularly Erica Kirk take the official story when that's not what Charlie's people would do? A lot of Charlie's people. Why would they just accept it? Because the official story sucks, right? So we're going to go through that. I'm going to get to that in a voiceover. I want to show you all these things first, and then I have several points to get to in the voiceover. And then I'll hopefully get to a bunch of other things this Sunday, September 28th. I want to do a lesser video. We've just got a great weather here. And I want to get as much stuff done outside as I can. We've had this wonderful late summer. But my wife sent me this yesterday. And so there is, the video, as you can see, is 3 minutes and 22 seconds long. And I used to make short videos. Like now I make one long video, but I used to make multiple short videos. I make one long video for, it just works out better for me. But I used to make 4 or 5 videos a day, and it was all, individual subjects. And sometimes they were short, and sometimes they'd be 3 minutes and 22 seconds, and then people would say to me, whatever, they'd be 9/11 or whatever it is, right? And I'd be like, well, yeah, that's just how the video turned out. Like, I didn't intentionally plan that, right? So, it was just something that's just the way it was. But this one's, it means something in this one because, let me just show you, there's some things in it, right? So this video got 1.6 million views, and I have no idea how that could happen. It features, there she is, Erica Kirk, Erica Franzai, whatever her name is, she's there. She's got her boots on, and she's, and the name of the video is, She Is My Kind of Crazy. She's a model and an actress and a former beauty queen. So she learned how to pose. She's not really good at acting, at least the grief part. But I think she's good at other things. Like, I think she's good at, flirting. I think she's good at getting men to do what she wants. Maybe even women. She's good at, she's got other acting skills. She's not good at grieving. Like, she sucks at it. Like, she couldn't pull off the grieving part. There are some people who could make themselves cry. Ron Howard's daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, is that what she's called? There's a video of her making herself cry on one of those talk shows, Conan O'Brien or one of those things. But she's just not good at that, right? So this trip is about going to Vegas. Some guy, this poor sad loser here, has picked up Erica Kirk, and they're heading to Vegas. And this guy's singing how she's my kind of crazy. So they head to Las Vegas, right? And they, hit the sights here. They're on the strip. There she is. She's my kind of crazy. She uses her hair quite well. And I love you. I owe you. Some kind of, I don't know what that is about. There's an IOU there. And they're on the strip and they're having fun. So this part, she's reaching out, right? She's reaching out. And boom, comes to Las Vegas. And she's pointing, and then boom, she's pointing to the pyramid and the Sphinx there. There's that area by I guess it's by Mandalay Bay. Remember, there was some kind of incident, right? There was this mass shooting, and it was right there in front of the pyramid. And the, you know, I when my family and I came back from India, we ended up in Vegas, and you know, it was weirdly just that's just how it went. Which I thought it would be really difficult because where I was in India it was so easy to meditate, very spiritual place, the ashrams, and I was having so much trouble dealing with the grossness of the things I covered. You know, I was making these videos about Full House and these other things, demonic Hollywood stuff, and just all this heavy, gross things. And I was getting all these sittings. I was going through a divorce, and really, probably the most stressful time of my life, just the whole thing. And you know, ended up being really beneficial spiritually. Like it just was a great time for me. But you know, I was relying on the meditation that I do and having these preceptors, you know, they give these individual sittings and group meditations and the energy at the ashram and all these things. And I was like, well, how am I going to be able to maintain that in Vegas? You know, especially with all this. You know, I was just doing this as a full-time job for about a year and a half, you know, whatever it was. And you know, it took a lot out of me diving into the cesspit every day. It just like I had to fight off the just depravity. But something happened. But I really love the Vegas area. It's a very spiritual area, not, you know, the Strip, but all around that area, Utah, Arizona, uh, Nevada, just, you know, very sublime. And I found out that, you know, I was able to you know, find other ways to deal with the depravity. But anyways, you know, they have this thing. She's driving here, and she's pointing, and boom, you know. So this is you know, significant, right? Because there's a Freemason. The Freemasons worship the great architect who is, you know, about the you know, the Illuminati stuff too, with the, you know, the pyramids and the capstones and whatever. But you know, so it's 3 minutes and 22 seconds long, and there's this, you know, pyramid and something. That's not really much, right? That's something, you know. That's, yeah. But she's not directing the video. This is an old thing. This is a number of years old. But then this happens at the end. You know, she's a lot better at fake smiling and acting like she's happy than she is at grieving. So she was miscast for whatever role she's in now. But here they are together. She's doing that flirtatious look. Look, she's good at this thing. You know. And again, it's easy to spot, so it's not like it's, but you know, it's you know, it's like casting a spell, right? Like that's like casting a spell on a dude. And this guy's singing away. She's my kind of crazy. She's my kind of crazy. Then this happens. She does this thing. They're going on here. Just hanging out. And she's going on this little Viva Las Vegas. And she's on kind of a zip line. And she's blowing through the thing. And boom, she's right here. And I don't know what that is. And it says 9/10. That's the day that Charlie Kirk was killed. This says Fremont, I guess. I don't know. But here's the boom. So that, you know, that ain't a coincidence. I mean, the very day that here she is going by there, right? It's got singing away, so she's got her black pants. So you can see that's her. There she is, her black pants going through here. Boom. Actually, she's right here. That's her there, over here. And so there she goes, right there. She's right under 9/10. Fremont, it says sweet. And so, boom. So, that's something. I don't know if I'm missing something. If I am, I am. So, you know, you have to combine this with what we saw with the Charles Kirkland being shot in the neck and Snake Eyes in the beginning when it said Tyler, and it said Tyler the Executioner, and it said September 19th, which is going to be also September 10th, with the 1 and the 9 being added together. You know, so there's a lot here. This is an 11-year-old music video with 1.7 million views. She's my kind of crazy. And she's flirting and acting and doing things and being seductive and doing, her whatever stuff that she did, beta kitten kind of stuff that she's doing. Um, and so, this is something. Like, it's not nothing, right? Like, coincidences just don't happen. Like, because if you're a godly person, which she claims to be, you believe that there's a plan, right? That everything is orchestrated and there's a plan. And if you're a atheist, you believe that there is no plan. It's all random and chaotic, right? And so I see every day that there's a plan. Like something shows me that there's a plan, right? That things aren't random. But it's subtle and it's not provable, but it's going to be provable to you, like for your own experience. And I give examples all the time of things that happen to me that show that there's a plan. And so they have this stuff out here. They, who knows? Or let's say they base this plot, this storyline on the movie, Snake Eyes, which again takes place in a gambling city in Atlantic City, and here she is in Vegas. Of course, Vegas is close to Utah. Utah and Arizona, they're all neighboring states. So she was in Arizona. Now it's come out. The first story that was out there, one of the first stories I heard about this, was that his little daughter ran up to him on stage when she heard the gunshot. She freaked out, his 3-year-old, and ran, and he was, of course, bleeding. But there was no evidence to support that. And of course, she came out and finally dispelled that because she was back in Arizona because they had to deliver the body to her via Air Force Two with JD and Usha Vance. So her and her family, her and the kids were supposedly back in Arizona. And so, with Arizona and Utah, neighboring states, they had to fly this body back. Remember that whole thing that happened. That stagecraft that happened from there. But anyways, there's this stuff out there. There's video clips of her. They're putting together stuff about her more than they are about this guy, Tyler Robinson. In fact, Tyler Robinson has more or less disappeared. Like, his storyline is basically done. Like, they disappeared these guys. He was a guy that, what do you know about him? He was a guy that wrote a weird love letter confession that doesn't sound like anybody to his gay lover, transgender dude. And he confessed also on Discord a little bit. And he, this whole thing with the gun and all this stuff. So, what? Why is she, they're unpacking her. Like, she's the central figure now. She's taken over for Charlie Kirk, and it's not going well. So that's the first piece. So it's done with this portion of the video, but my wife told me there's something else to see here. And I looked at it, and here, let me show you it here. So, my wife had said that people were saying that she threw up the devil's horns here. And I don't know if it's her hand in here. But see her hand, her finger disappears here. You'll see it. I'll show you this again. So it might be in here with her hand. Somebody said somewhere in here around the 123 mark of the video. I had to go back. So there's a welcome to Vegas thing. And then she just got her hand here. Watch, her finger's going to disappear. Like, see right there? There's a glitch out. She's got her hand up there. So I don't know if there's, maybe it's up here. So her hand just goes up. There's no devil's horns there. So I think people are just imagining it. She, her hand here is going to glitch out. Her finger just glitches out there for a second. And it disappears. So that's kind of weird. And then comes the pyramid. Anyways, I'll just add this to the other part of the video that I showed you here. So just so you see it here, I superimposed the picture. You can see the Sphinx behind her in the pyramid shadow and her glitched out hand there in the truck. Kind of an interesting picture there. Okay, so this person wrote this, Erica Kirk leaving her husband's memorial yesterday, knowing God is in control. They're playing the song "Jesus Take the Wheel." I got a great Tucker Carlson clip and then a Joe Rogan thing as well, and then I'm going to do the voiceover. And so, let's mute this thing. How do I mute it up here? So like, just weird. This girl's dressed in some kind of. It's just weird. Like they're just everything. Like they're videoing this. Like this is, this is not some random paparazzi. This is people on her team that decide, all right, let's do a little pimp walk here. let's do a little runway walk. And here they are, and like that girl looks like she's dressed for a wedding. The other girl looks like she's, like a Las Vegas hooker or something, right? With some, right, would like a hooker that would be outside a Republican convention with red, white, and blue boots, and then hers looking like, I mean, I don't know what to say about her whole outfit. She's got a little bit of black, but mostly white. This is all stagecraft. Like, too much of this stuff, right? I mean, there shouldn't be any of it. Like, this should be 100% about grieving your husband. So again, they decide to film all this other stuff. So here she is smiling again. Erica smiles. Erica with a K. But then she goes from smiling to dabbing her eyes. Here comes this guy right here. She's dabbing her eyes, and then they check in again. There's a little more physical contact. They're saying that, was it the national anthem there? God bless America. So she's there crying. There's the Trumpsters, and then the smile, right? Like just, she's crying and smiling at the same time, dabbing her eyes. This thing where she dabs her eyes, like it's a whole thing. Oh, hey, look, I'm crying, I'm dabbing my eyes. Like, I think they settled on that, so it's easier to see. Like, if she was just standing there crying, you couldn't really see. Like, you couldn't see the tears and, it's these things. But, oh, she's dabbing her eyes. She must be really sad. Don't let those tears flow. You want to keep your, boom. And then she's there and here. And she's, like, sitting there, and, boom, and there's a smile and a laugh. Got to give Trump some love. A smile and a laugh. I was talking to my wife. My wife is one of those just a happy person. And she laughs all the time, loves to laugh, and she's got a great sense of humor. And when our dog, Farley, got run over by a car, she was really sad. And there was a number of days, and I don't know how many it was, where, laughing wasn't on the table. Like, we often eat lunch and watch Impractical Jokers. We have it, like, recorded, and she loves that show, and, and if I tried to get her to laugh or make jokes, it just wouldn't happen. You have this thing inside of you that makes you laugh sincerely, right? Like, it feels good. Like, when you laugh, it feels good. When you smile in the natural way, it feels good. When the happiness bubbles up in you. And then you express something in a natural, organic way. Where your expression, there's an emotion, there's a feeling inside of you. And of course, love and the feeling of love and God's love, which I'll talk about more in the voiceover, which comes over you, right? And you can feel God's love, but just be sad. Right? Being sad isn't a bad thing. Being like it's a thing. It's just a condition. You feel it in there. In grief and suffering from grief, it's a thing. It's like a healthy way to deal with something that ends. Like there's an ending in your relationship, right? And so, she was smiling that first day when she gave that speech. At Turning Point. And she had these smiles and laughs and, Charlie, and she'd remember him and fondly, and then, and it just doesn't happen. Like, there's things that happen, you just want to stare at the wall. And one of the great things about doing the Sage Mark meditation, gratefulness meditation that I do, that you go inside and you just connect to God in such a deep way that you don't want to deal with the world. Like you just want to stay basking in God's love. Like this, you get into this spiritual state. And you have these things, like you have all these things that you can go through, these different states of being, and one of them is grief. And some of these things, you just don't want to deal with other people. and you just don't want, like, you don't go to work, like, unless you really want a distraction, right? Like, unless you want to just, not think about the thing. But, her thing is something like she's taken on a monumental change in her life to where she's doing her husband's job. Like, how many people can do their spouse's job, right? Like, how many people, if your spouse died, you could go either do their physical job or do all the work they did around the house, right? Like, there's things that, like recipes that I cook, things that I do in terms of cooking and things I do around the homestead that no one else really knows about. They don't know how I do it, certainly making these videos and the way I go about it, even just the technical things, never mind the inspirational content. It's not something that people can just step in just because you're married to somebody or you're close to them. Jesus left behind disciples, and he left behind Mary Magdalene, who he had a relationship with. Like, they were intimate. They had, sexual relationship. And, I mean, I pretty much know this from, like, reliable sources. The second master of Jesus himself, second master of the system, Sage system, who really wasn't familiar with Jesus' story, was sitting around with a bunch of people from Denmark. And he intercommuned. They were asking him questions about Jesus, and he just intercommuned with them, and he asked them because he had that ability. And Jesus said something about, his attachment to Mary. And they were like, his mother Mary? And Babaji said, I don't know. And he asked him again. And Babaji said, no, another Mary that, when he was adult. And they were like, oh, Mary Magdalene. So there was they had a relationship. But, he had a wife and he had disciples. And, in most traditions, your wife doesn't come in and take over your spiritual work. You leave a disciple, which I'll get into in a bit, right? In fact, I'll bring this point back up when I'm doing the narrative. But, that's what's happened here. And so she's a model and an actress and, maybe a mom. And she has her abilities, but she doesn't have Charlie's abilities, right? And so, and she's acted so poorly. And you have all these truthers / conspiracy theorists, a lot of them, there's cubies and people like that, very paranoid people who don't trust the official story, and they're not looking into Tyler Robinson. They're questioning this, right? They're questioning, Erica Smiles, Kirk, right? So this is, they're going after her.
I don't buy the reassembly. I do not buy that. They said he had a screwdriver up there. Yourself.
A screwdriver?
Yeah,
They're saying that the guy took his rifle apart and then put it back together there. And I haven't looked into all those details because I know that I never buy the lone gunman story. Like, if there are real dead bodies and there's real shooting, it ain't some freaking lone gunman. It's a CIA trained assassin and a hit team, right? If that's what has actually happened, isn't some lone 22-year-old gay dude with his upset about his his liberal views, like, who's been radicalized. It just that story's already faded. Like, nobody buys that shit. That story's already been, like, which I'm going to speak to too as well in this thing.
More than a screwdriver, you need multiple tools. Okay.
So he's end up calling bullshit on the whole story here. Joe Rogan does. I'm not going to show you the rest of this because they copyright stuff. Joe Rogan does. But this is right. Like, so he doesn't buy the story, and the story's already faded. Like, this Tyler Robinson. When's the last time they made it? He was in a mainstream news story. He's just identified like, all right, he's guilty. This guy did it. This is what happened. Everyone, nothing to see here, folks. Let's move on. And so all the focus goes on to Erica Kirk, right? And Turning Point, because they're failing to acknowledge what everyone else is seeing, that this story is fake, right? So, what percentage of the Turning Point audience is suspicious of Charlie's death? And then there's one more thing here with Tucker Carlson. Okay, so I'm about to make the voiceover. There's a video clip you're about to see with Tucker Carlson, and I was about to do the voiceover that's going to precede this, or go after it. Go after the Tucker Carlson thing. But I went and ate breakfast, and my wife and I went for a walk. And first, YouTube recommended this comment. And this is like part of a plan, right? So it says, also, why so private about not showing their kids' faces, but it's all right to show herself doing private stuff, like with her filming herself over the casket. So my wife had seen this video. So then YouTube recommends this video. It's the top video. I open up YouTube on my phone, there's always short videos. There's 4 short videos. In the top left-hand corner was this video. And my wife had told me about this. Maybe she saw it 5-6 days ago. I'm not sure which. But she also had seen it recently because we were talking about it on our walk. But see, he's looking at the camera. He's so fucking weird. He's not, like, when I first saw him, I'm like, oh, this guy's not spiritual at all. Like, you could just tell by his face, there's not only narcissism, but it's just, he might be religious, but he's not spiritual. Like, he really doesn't have some kind of active internalized connection to God consciously between with the ego working towards connecting the divinity within him. There might be something there, that maybe on the, flirting with spirituality where there's some channeling of some things. But a lot of the things that he says are not coming from a spiritual place. They're coming from a document, a religious document, right? A religious dogma. And he's very performative. So he's looking at the camera.
Storytelling. So we're here at Bill's Burgers in New York City. And right near this very table was the first time Dad met Mama. And it started as a job interview.
He's got baby teeth still, so he talks with like kind of a lisp. Like you see his teeth are really small. I think he has that condition where you don't get adult teeth. But he keeps on looking. It's weird, like this whole thing. Let me just play the rest of this and we'll do it without the...
I was asking all these questions, philosophy, religion, Jesus, and then I realized Mama was beautiful and smart and elegant and Christ-like, and so I said, forget this job interview, I want to date you. And I said, I have enough friends, and that's where your journey started.
Okay, in my loins. Okay, so it's a weird story to tell a kid, right? It's a 3-year-old kid, too. It's a weird story, not to tell a teenage kid or a 10-year-old kid. It's a weird story to tell, right? Because it's story time. Like, you don't talk to kids about dating, and Christians wouldn't. Kids don't need to know about dating and romance and, these things. It's adult-level concept, right? And so, but he's doing it not for her. This is all performative. He's using his kid like a fucking prop here, right? Like, because he keeps on looking at the camera. So let's play it again. So he looks at the camera there, boom, and then he grabs her arms. They're very like he's holding her there. Looks at the camera again, boom, and then this does his thing. He's like, look at how close he is. It's fucking weird, right? And he's just not good at interacting. Like, this is not how you interact with 3-year-olds. Look at how fucking close he is. She's leaning backwards. He's sticking his big face in her mug there, right? And then he looks at the camera again. Like, this is all performative. Like, look at how great I am. This is, again, not a spiritual thing. Like, it's, this is to make him look better. Instigal thing. Then he grabs her face here for no reason. Like, just doesn't have to be this physical. But, it's because the kid wouldn't like this story. This isn't a kid's story, right? That's grabbing her face there. He's, shaking her around. Looked at the camera again right there. Looked at the camera. Here, look, look how great I am. Look. So he's trying to, make the kid, have a physical experience here by shaking her and doing these things, stimulate, keep her interested. Looks at the camera again. Then does this thing with her arms. Again, very performative. And does that thing with her arms. Like she's on a roller coaster. And then this thing goes back down, looks at the camera again. And then does thing with her arms, going back and forth, puts her hands to things. So she has a reaction, not to the story. She doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, right? She's not like, why are you even saying this, right? Why are we even talking about this? And he looks at the camera again. Look at what a good dad I am. Animated, touching her face, wiggling around again. all that stuff. I mean, it would be better if you didn't even bring your kids into this at all. And then shakes her up again, this stuff, and whatever. So there's actually one more clip I have here, which I forgot about, which has to do with Charlie talking about his being killed, that I'll put in after Tucker Carlson. So I'm going to expand on all these things in a voiceover, but I'm going to cover this briefly here, and then weave these things all together.
And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it. And they.
So where did you get this story? Like, it sounds like a story you just made up. Like, you're. It's not like this didn't happen, but it's not a real story. Like, you're just, right. So let's start again here. Right. So he's saying here.
And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever.
His favorite story ever.
So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it. And
so they hate it. Who's they? Who's they? Is it the Pharisees? Is it the Romans? Who is it?
They become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch.
So this is a story that's made. Is in your own mind, right?
Bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us. We must make him stop talking. And there's
again, he's really happy for a guy who just lost one of his best friends, right? And he's talking about Jesus being killed here.
Always one guy with the bright idea, and I could just hear him say, "I've got an idea. Why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem."
And he does that weird fucking laugh, right? Like he said, this is a memorial. This was the most fucked up thing ever. This whole memorial. Like I didn't see Tucker Carlson's speech, and he's smiling. They're all laughing. They're talking shit. Like none of them are. I mean, there's no like real emotion here, right?
That'll fix the problem. It doesn't work that way.
It totally does. It totally works that way. So I'll start off with that, and then let me shift over to voiceover. So I forgot to add this. Here we go.
Murder Alex or murder me. They already murdered themselves in that action. They already bestowed the punishment upon themselves. We are simply completing the task. When you take another person's life, you already took your own life.
I have concerns over things like the death penalty.
Okay, so he's talking about if somebody murdered him. Of course, who is it, right? I mean, murdering somebody there's like if some government employs a sniper, that's a whole different thing than this kid going out and doing this on his own, right? Then there's a lot of people involved in this thing. But let me go over to the voiceover. I wanted to add this. I forgot to add this, but this is part of what I want to talk about. So I want to segue this into why she and Turning Point USA are accepting the official story, because they're obviously in on it, right? And why it doesn't matter, because we can't do anything about any of these things. So I want to segue into that. But the first part is Tucker Carlson saying, like, how did that work out, killing Jesus? Like, he was laughing, like, Jesus' death made Jesus so much bigger. And, he's a CIA shill. There's all this evidence that he's still he was part of the CIA and all these things. He's controlled opposition even now that he's gone a little bit more truther. And all these people who have a microphone in front of them are controlled in one way or another. And all of us are controlled just because we're dependent on the system, whether we know it or not. Like, there's controls, implemented. I mean, there's systematic censorship and things like this. But this idea that things got better after Jesus died is like totally false. is evil worse now than it was when Jesus was alive, right? So I think that this was a shot at Zionists and Israel and Jewish establishment that Tucker was saying, that he's saying that they tried to kill Jesus or they killed Jesus and thinking he would be silenced, and he wasn't. But the time to be, when Jesus was at his peak, was when he was alive. So there's a few things here. The first part is that Charlie Kirk and Jesus died in their early 30s. And there's, some discrepancy with Jesus, but I think Charlie Kirk is he 31, 33, he's 31. And so I think it's 31, doesn't matter. But speaking as somebody who's twice as old as Charlie Kirk, I was a kid when I was 31. And I had just started Saj Marg. I just had a spiritual awakening. But I was a kid. Like it was, 30 seems like old, and you're having like an adult life, but like I was a child, and I didn't really start like cracking the code of my life until fairly recently. Like in my 50s, like I just kind of got it. Like there was just something that happened where, I kind of understood. I mean, as best you can. There's a lot of mysteries in the spiritual world and life itself, but until you enter into your 50s, 60s, 70s, you're just you got all this youthful energy, and it starts to dissipate in your 40s, and you're maturing, but you don't really mature into like adulthood. Like you've had so many years to reach. There's a stage, these milestones, these stages in life, right? So like this stuff with Charlie Kirk talking to his daughter and telling her all these stories and making her watch his TV show. This was my last video I covered this, where he would make her watch his show when she was 3 years old. We'd be talking about adult shit that she couldn't even understand. And he'd do this by bringing one of her toys in and then grilling her to see if she knew which toy it was that he brought in, right? So there's this whole thing. And again, I don't think these are real kids. I don't think there was a real marriage. But this is a weird thing to do with kids. But even when you talk to your kids about this, remember she told that weird blueberry story where, if she was at the place, because her daughter said, "Where's Daddy?" She's like, "Well, he's on a special assignment with Jesus because he needs to make a lot of money, to support your blueberry habit," right? That's what she told her daughter, like this fucked up thing. But in all that, when you turn 7 years old, your brain prunes all these synapses, all these various there's biological pruning of your brain. Like your brain, some parts of your brain is restructured, and that's why you lose all your childhood memories, because you become a kid then, and then your brain is developing and growing as a kid into an adolescent, and then you get you get testosterone as a male, and you're whatever 12, 13 years old. I mean, you can't reproduce, right? You can't reproduce till you go through puberty, and then there's also a changing of your brain, the way your brain works. And, like there's, if you think about your brain changing when you're turning 13, 14, 12, now sometimes it's 10, 11, based on all the hormones and shit out there. It's weird. Kids are like now having puberty younger. But how fucked up you are as a 12, 13-year-old kid, like, when you go through puberty, you're like fucked up. And you're like, and then you fully grow as an adult between 18 and 20, some people younger. But you're a full-grown adult. And that period between being a teenager and a full-grown adult, you're adjusting to having like that adult level brain. And then you become an adult, and it takes you so many years to be, it takes you even longer to adjust to all your just being an adult, being a mature person. And then your spirituality kicks in. Like that's the best time to become spiritual, in your 40s, 50s, 60s. I've talked about this before. People used to live hundreds of years, thousands of years in some cases. And when you live that long, you would have a separate time for work, a separate time to have a family, and a separate time to focus on your spirituality, right? As you got older, you could focus like 100 years on being spiritual, or even longer, and meditate and, get into all these things, right? And so you go through these phases in life. And when you're 30 years old, you're still overwhelmed by all these things. Now he's, only been married like 4 or 5 years, whatever. And has got 2 kids. I mean, this is his story, the official story. And he's got this huge $100 million a year company. And, God is not really much of a part of his life. Like, he can spend sometimes focusing on that, but your kids and your family and all your employees and all the social media he's doing and the traveling, it's not a focus. And the same thing with Jesus, right? The best of Jesus's spiritual development was yet to come. He did some immature things and said some immature things. The other thing that people don't know about Jesus was he wasn't really 100% spiritual. He was more a social advocate. He was more like, I want to say he's political, but he was a social reformer. Like somebody like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, people who are wanting to change things politically. And that's where you get into trouble, because that's not what you're supposed to do. I mean, if your assignment is to be 100% spiritual, if you're supposed to bring in a spiritual teaching, you don't get into politics, you don't get into the corruption, you don't get into like all these things that Tucker Carlson said. You don't get into any of that stuff because you can't change it. You can't change people like that. You have to work with the establishment. You have to be not seen as a threat to the establishment so that you can get the message out, the spiritual message, because politics doesn't do shit. Like, power and money and these things, you can't change those things. You can't use those things to change those things. Those things are corrupting, right? Jesus made a number of like immature decisions, not for his age, but for somebody who would have been, later on would have made those same decisions. Like you have to learn and you have to grow. And, the people in that area all the way over through Europe and now America, where white people live, they kill saints. Like they kill people who are saints, but specifically saints that are talking about political things and are using God to, they're bringing God into things, but not, their focus isn't on God. It's about changing the world, right? And you're not here to change the world on a material level. You're not here to change the government. You're not here to make sure politicians get elected, one party or the other. You're not here to pick sides, any of those types of things. You're here to develop spiritually and connect to God and the divinity within you and act as an example, right? And if you just do that and nobody knows about it, like if you come in and you reach the highest level of spiritual potential and like nobody knows, like just a handful of people know, it changes everything because, there's this thing called the 100th monkey syndrome. And what it was is like if monkeys developed, they saw these monkeys developing a certain, species of monkeys, like rhesus monkeys, but, something like that, whatever it was. And they developed the use of this tool. And after enough time, like you reached, so many of the monkeys were doing it. Like one monkey started it, and then like 100 monkeys reached it. They're just saying 100 because it's a round number. Then somewhere across the country where a monkey didn't see it, no, monkey see, monkey do. Where they didn't learn from another monkey, they have the same process. They develop the same skill, right? And this happens in humanity. You see this all the time where people come up with the same ideas. You'll see people in the truth community coming up with the same ideas, same takes, same way to see things. And so, there's this idea of breaking the 4-minute mile. That was a big, milestone in track and field, to run a mile in 4 minutes. Of course, now it's all in kilometers, but, back when, somebody Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. And you have these achievements, and then one person does it, then everyone else has the opportunity to do it, right? And so that's more so with spirituality than anything else. So even if you lived in complete anonymity and you just rocked it spiritually, you give everyone a chance to do something, and through your accomplishments, and it's because one person does it, that means other people can do it, right? It's a breakthrough, and then you pull people up without people get pulled up by your achievements, whether you see it or whether they even meet you or not. But if they're lucky enough to meet you and be around you and experiencing your energy and your consciousness, then that's a whole nother thing, right? That's how the Sajmark system works. You have somebody who has mastered themselves, the master of the system, and then you spend time with them and you experience their transmission. They're able to transmit from their spiritual attainment, this thing called the central region, where they've merged back into the source. And you sit there and you meditate on your heart and you receive this energy. And things are cleaned out so that you can better, experience this energy and integrate it into your system. And so now you have a part of you has that ultimate goal already. You've experienced it. You've gotten a taste of it. And then your spiritual aspect starts to crave it on like a subconscious level. And you start moving to get more of that. You start to move on your own spiritual path. So this is the method. Christianity didn't leave behind, Jesus didn't leave behind a method. There's no method to attain what he attained. Like everyone thinks that Jesus was born at this high level because he was the son of God, but that's just some bullshit stuff that they're telling you. And Jesus, went to India and he learned how to meditate. Like that's part of his story. There's records in India of somebody that fits Jesus' description. Jerusalem and India, I mean, they're not overly close, but there's this idea that these three kings that came to see him were from India. But either way, he had some system, and it's meditation is the way you connect to God. So whatever spiritual attainment Jesus had, he had a method that he did. He did something, like he did some spiritual practice. There's spiritual rituals, and then there's meditation. If you connect to God internally, you have to meditate. You have to use meditation is something that everybody does, and they're not aware of it, right? There's, the object of meditation. My wife and I were watching that Netflix documentary about the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. I had already seen it, but she wanted to see it. I watched it again. I actually got more out of it the second time. It's a well-made thing. But there's the part of it where Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson, his coach, are, they're having an ego battle. And eventually, even though they've won 2 Super Bowls in a row, they decide to part ways. And he said that he was so stressed out. He was having, had these various heart issues, and he had, some minor cancer, and he was told that he had to meditate. So he went to some psychologist, and she told him this was the practice of meditation she gave him. She said that you should think about somebody you hate, make a list of the people that you most dislike, and wish them well. Just think of them getting all the great material things, like you're blessing them. And he tells a story. He went back to her and said, I'm stuck on number 1, this motherfucker Jimmy Johnson. I can't get past it, right? He was so angry and hate, whatever. And that's kind of a form of meditation. But when you meditate, you have to have an object. And people will meditate on their boyfriend or their girlfriend or their, whatever it might be. Their vacation, you're at work or you're driving, and your mind goes into a meditative state, right? You're on a train or an airplane, you're looking out the window, and you get into this sort of daydream kind of, you're not sleeping, but you're not, So there's this meditative state. But if the object of your meditation is God, then you move spiritually. So meditation there has to be an object of your meditation. And Jesus did something, like there's some form of meditation, he meditated somehow. And he didn't pass that on to his disciples, or he did, and they didn't pursue it. They didn't keep that thing going. So this idea, so it died with him, right? Whatever Jesus achieved, the method of his achievement died. He didn't explain to them. I'm sure he did tell them I'm sure they were doing it. But somewhere between, the first 100 years or so of his death, it became just about a book and not about a method, right? You have to have a method. You have to have a spiritual practice. You have to do something. Like with anything else, it takes practice. And so you start to meditate and you get better at it, and your relationship with the divinity within you gets refined. And that's the beauty of the Sajmark system, that there's cleaning and transmission, which enhances your own meditative practice of connecting with the divinity within you. It supercharges it. And it's, on a practical level, those of us who have experienced it, you can't even describe how great it is and how transformative it is, right? But even in that, which I've seen there's all these saintly people and higher developed souls that do the Sajmark system, and they all have their moments of failure and whatever it is, spiritual, where they rise to a high level of spirituality, and there's a spiritual fall. So even then, there's, even if you got the best system and the best practice, and you have, a master of caliber, a spiritual master of caliber, human nature just fucking kills you, right? It just brings you down. There's this thing called spiritual gravity, where someone rises up to a high level and they just get pulled back down. So there's all these things are factors, right? In in a spiritual journey. And in terms of what Christianity is now, it's none of that shit, right? It's a powerful organization where people read a book or read parts of a book or tell people they read parts of a book, and they go to mass and they think about football game and they, whatever, they're thinking about this or that. They're not about Jesus, not about God. They don't, and there's no meditation, there's no method, there's no system, right? And so for Tucker Carlson to say, yeah, they killed him, how'd that work out? Well, it worked out great for them, because the same types of people that killed Jesus, these powerful people, controlling people, now control Christianity. They've compromised it. Okay, so my wife and I went for a walk, and then we had lunch, and I remembered something I wanted to say, and I'll get back to what I was saying. This will weave into it anyway. So, watching this Netflix thing, and we went for a walk last night, and we came back in, and there was, where there's a screensaver, and Netflix will show some of their other great viewing content, right? And there was a movie called Sweet Home Alabama, which I saw a number of years ago. I think the movie's probably like 20 years old. I think it was an all right movie. It's like a chick flick. Reese Witherspoon, who goes back to Alabama after living in the big city, and, she doesn't want to go back there. She has some kind of, gets dragged back by her inbred family, whatever it is, right? It's and so it's this kind of story about where they go home and they realize they'd rather live there than the big city, that kind of thing. And she falls in love. I don't know. I'm not going to watch it again. The reason I'm talking about it is they have these little sort of hashtaggy keywords under each movie, and it said comedy, romance, and feel good. Right? It said feel good on it, right? It's a feel good movie. And, I was saying to my wife, why aren't all movies feel good, right? And they probably don't even want to put feel good on it because it's not a selling point. Horror, drama, suspense, violent, whatever it is, right? Martial arts, these different things that they put on it. Erotic, right? This is a kind of, different name for softcore porn, but they don't want to put feel good. Feel good, fuck, it says feel good. Oh, well, I give it a shot, but I don't want to watch a feel-good movie, right? And that's the problem. Like in fact, is the problem with humanity. They want to be depressed. They want to feel suspenseful. They want to feel horror. Like for whatever, for every feel-good movie, there's probably 20 horror movies or whatever it is, suspense movies or drama movies. And so, how many of the things are designed to make you feel good? Almost never. Like they're always stressful. Like so much TV and movies is stress and drama and cliffhangers. And people love that shit. They want that, right? There's a scene from The Matrix where the first Matrix movie where the Smith character is talking about how when they built the first Matrix, this illusionary digital world where everybody was, the minds of the batteries, the human beings had scorched the earth, the atmosphere, so the AI couldn't get any more electricity from the sun. So they started using human beings as batteries, and they developed a matrix so their minds, so they would stay alive. And the first matrix they designed was a utopia, and the people rejected it, right? Because they wanted drama, they wanted filth, they wanted, dirty stuff, they wanted, depravity. So going back to what I was talking about, like I've experienced this in real time, and I think I've experienced this in past lives. I'm pretty sure that I was around the time of Jesus. I'm even more sure that I was at the time of the Mahabharata, and then some of these other times where there was a highly developed spiritual being or a spiritual movement. I was a part of it in some way, right? And, in this life I experienced it with Saj Marg. There was the first three masters. I knew the third one. And it was a remarkable system, and the Master Charji and the other two masters, Lalaji and Babaji, were beyond, reproach. They were just, just character qualities and the kind of people they were and their commitment to serving God. And, it was just beyond anything that people could imagine, right? Just, being around somebody like that, the effect that they had on the world. And then this fourth guy, Daji, came in. And he was gifted all the same things. The difference between the Sajmark system is the transmission, where the first two masters were able to transmit their condition, I mean, the third master did it. It just didn't take. Transmit their essence to somebody else, their successor, right? So if Jesus could have done that, then Peter would have had the essence of Christ inside of him. Jesus would have passed on the essence of himself into Peter. And, in this meditative transmission that happens. And so that essence would have been still around. And they kind of tried to make it sound like that was happening. The same thing in these Indian guru traditions. They hope that this can happen, where you pick out, the master assistant picks out a quality disciple and transmit the essence, the energy, the soul, the achievements in these things into his successor. And the Sajmark system actually did that. And, the second master was like more evolved in different ways and had more, more body of information. He discovered things. And then he passed that on to Charji. So the thing was growing, the essence of the knowledge base and the techniques, and it was being perfected and was being, adapted. So things were changing and growing. And then Charji passed this on to this guy, Daji, who completely shit the bed. Like, he just couldn't handle it. He didn't have the capacity. He turned it into like a really stupid cult. They do stupid culty things. I've talked about this extensively in the Journey series and other videos, right? And, I knew Daji, this guy Kamish Patel, beforehand. He was a good, solid, he was, somebody that I saw as like a saintly person. He had the capacity. He had good qualities, but it just didn't work for him. And watching this great system devolve, and like the people in it just not knowing how to handle it, either in denial about it, and in the Indian culture you don't question authority, and just all the things that have happened. It's really a bummer. Absolute fucking, it would be a devastating bummer, but I was just already, I already kind of got a sense. When you work as a counselor with teenage sex offenders, right, and you cover celebrity culture and the stuff that I've seen in my life and the things I've seen here and the stories I've heard. My brother told me some of the stories of, he was in Vietnam and he was counseling Vietnam vets, and he told me some horrible shit that he was told by clients. He worked for the VA, and he was going out and counseling vets, and there's things like I wish I could just erase from I wish I never heard them, right? The things that they did or they saw happen in Vietnam, things that happen in war, the depravity of people. But, you have a spiritual system. Jesus was a spiritual person, and probably St. Paul and maybe St. Peter and some of these other disciples were also spiritual people. But there was a fall off when Jesus died, and it's been, worse every year since. It's a law of diminishing return. It's no longer what it was. And so when Tucker Carlson gets up there and says this stupid shit like, oh, it didn't work, it totally worked. The world would be a transformed place. And Christianity would be so much better than it is if Jesus had reached his full potential. And the other thing is, going back to what Charlie Kirk said about somebody killing you, they kill themselves. Well, really, it's about destiny. And so if you don't have being murdered as part of your samskaric patterns, it can't happen to you. Or if God prevents it, if you're working for God, and God wants to keep you alive. The third master of the Sajmark system, Master Charji, Babaji's kids turned on him because they were like real pieces of shit. They were horrible. And these other people turned on him when Babaji left. This was one of the reasons Daji shit the bed, the fourth guy. Because now there's like $1 billion in ashrams and properties, and, there's an organization, and now, politicians are showing up. Celebrities are showing up, this kind of thing. When it's grassroots and it's small, no one gives a shit. But even in his lifetime, Babaji, he died with about, the first master died with about 200 people who did the meditation. And Babaji started off with basically 5 of those people that transferred from their following Lalaji to him. And, there's these guys who are trying to use psychic powers to steal his spiritual powers, his spiritual, accomplishments. There's all this shit that happened, and people try to kill him. There's just these things, right? And Master Charji, somebody tried to poison him. Charji knew it, but ate the food anyway. And another guy, they hired a hitman to show up at a gathering and shoot him, and Charji came out and said, go ahead, shoot me. He said, what's stopping you? And the guy said, no, I see that you're the real deal. I'm not going to shoot you. The hitman said that. And so he walked away. And so the guy charged, he said, well, why don't you stay here and do the meditation? The guy said, I've killed too many people. I've done too much bullshit to be spiritual. But he was sensitive enough that God showed him that it'd be a mistake to kill Chargy, right? So, there's if God's there with you and you're doing God's work, and oftentimes, Jesus and these saints that die early, this happened to Gandhi, some of these spiritual people, political people, higher developed souls, they end up just praying to die because people just aren't getting it. Like, that's the problem. People just don't fucking get it. They don't rise up to it. And then it gets degraded. Like, so it turns into a power, what Christianity was supposed to be, what Jesus wanted it to be, and what it is now is completely different. And not in a good way. It's worse, much worse, right? And I think everybody can see that. Like, everybody who sees the way that Christianity has been used, the Crusades, doing all the shit that they did, conquering peoples, all the missionary shit that they did, going out and indoctrinating people by force in Europe, and all the abuse that they did, all the religious wars, all the Christian religious wars now, all the bullshit Christian stuff we hear all the time. The bad Christians, the power-hungry Christians, using Christ's name, doing horrible things in Christ's name. It's a bad thing. And this isn't, every religion turns into this because people suck and they want to use God as an authority to do their bad shit. They want to say, the king and the queen of England, they have this, when they get sworn in, whether it's the king or the queen, they carry a scepter and an orb, which means that they're God's representative on earth. Remember, manifest destiny. And whatever we do is God's will because we're doing it and we're working for God because God works for us. And it's fucking totally not true, right? You're just making shit up. And so again, Jesus was a social reformer and a spiritual person. A social reformer first. So he wasn't, he had barely scratched the surface of his spiritual potential. He's on the first rung of spirituality. That's much higher than the average person, but still, like, there's more to go. Jesus had more to go. Because you have to realize at some point, you can't change things on the material sphere. The best they can do is inspire people to follow and do what you do. Leave them a method and leave them a system and hope that they do it. And they probably won't. So there's been so much spiritual movements thrown at humanity and humanity just won't do it. You have hope and you do your work and you do what you get out of it, what you can get out of it in terms of your own spiritual growth, and you pray and for the other people to rise up to it, and some of them will rise up somewhat, some of them will at least dabble in it, right? Some of them will at least give it a good college try, and the other ones will really get into it for a bit, whoever. Then very few people are going to do it on the level that you did it, but whatever it is, at least there's some progress. People are going forward instead of going backwards. They're going towards God instead of away from God. But then you come around this turning point thing. This is why I've been covering this, because they try to tell their people that they're doing God's work and this is about God, this is about Jesus. It's none of those things. It's bullshit Republican stuff. It's a heavy influence of Israel, the dark side of Israel, the Zionist part of Israel. It's the worst kind of Christianity. They have some things that are true, but they're all political things. Whether it be about abortion or some of these things, they're on the right side of some things, but mostly they're doing damage and they're masquerading as a godly organization when they're, political and dark and heavy and all these things. I mean, it's just clearly that. And so, the other issue here, which I want to go back to this thing I was saying in the beginning, that, all of the people in Turning Point, and I got a kind of an understanding of that demographic. I mean, they're going after youthful people, but it's not just youthful people. If you look in the audience, it's a lot of QBs, a lot of right-wing truthers, a lot of people who think the media is fake news. They're semi-truthers. They're not like most of my viewers, most of us here. They don't know about the right life paradigm, or they don't understand it. They're not capable of abstract thought, double-digit IQ motherfucker kind of, whatever. Some of them, smart or whatever, but still, they are, they're dabbling with this idea of truther stuff. And they are clearly not believing in the official story about events like this. And so when Charlie Kirk got murdered, they're not trusting the government or the media. They're just not going to do that, right? And amongst those people are famous people, who are, definitely shills for one group or another. They're, Tucker Carlson, the CIA. I mean, they're plants. They're not, trustworthy gatekeepers. But Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly. Remember when Megyn Kelly was on MSNBC and she got liberal for a little bit? She did a hit piece on Alex Jones, and Trump said that she was bleeding out of her eyes, bleeding out of whatever in that debate. Like Trump went after her, now they're pals. But Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and Candace Owens, and amongst other people, just people I don't know about who have an audience, right-wing truthers, some of these people that are whatever they are, and even people like Joe Rogan, they're not going to buy this bullshit story about this individual guy. Now, these are the same people who wouldn't say that the Trump assassination was fake as fuck, because they can't do that. But they can do this thing with Charlie. And so the story has been blown up. And now people are looking into Erica Kirk and some of her things. People are saying she was married before, and there's questions about her family. Does her dad work for Mossad or the military-industrial complex? There's all these deep dives going on. And the Turning Point audience is going to go into that. So, they've had to address, because a couple of guys accused of things, one of the Turning Point employees grabbed either a camera or a hologram projector or something. People will speculate on what it is. And another one of them, he was making two of them were making weird hand signals. And I saw a video in where they addressed this. This main guy now, this Andrew guy who runs Turning Point, he just doesn't have any charisma. He doesn't have the it factor. So they're hemorrhaging that way. And they still want to keep this organization going. But, if they love this guy, they all claim to love Charlie. And they were close. They were Charlie's disciples and his wife. They were the people that were around him. The people who believed in him and his mission. You think that they wanted to get to the bottom of this, and they would, when there's these glaring holes in the official story, but they're fucking not. They're not, let's move on as quickly as possible. They want to talk about some kind of evil group of people that were involved in this persecution of him and his vision. Some devil worshiping, evil devil-like people. But right now they're settling for one skinny gay dude, with a rifle and a screwdriver and a transgender lover that's out in Utah. And the only really incriminating evidence is a couple of love letters and Discord posts that sound like they were written by an FBI agent, right? And so, they just can't do it because they're part of it. Whatever this is, whatever this scam is, Turning Point is a part of it, right? And they're running it on these people. And, I don't know at what point, Candace Owens wants to stay in good whatever with Erica Kirk and whatever is going on there and these other people. And, they're all shells, they're all part of it. But the average people are going to say, you're on the other side of this thing. At some point, that's what they're going to come in terms of their conclusion. They have to come there. You can never underestimate the stupidity of people. And so this brings me to my final point. I wanted to say this in the beginning of some video, and I want to re-say this hopefully in another voiceover or mention this in a video. Because let's say 80% of America thinks that the official story is bullshit. The liberals, I showed you a liberal nurse who I was surprised at the amount of comments about her tattoos. I got about 20 comments on her tattoos, and I'm like, yeah, she's a liberal nurse. That's kind of, she's anti-raw milk, right? She's on the right side of this Erica Kirk thing. But anyways, the left wing is going to go after it. And, Epstein stuff is coming back up. They're going to try to push it. Jen Psaki had a thing about that. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. But the left wing is all in on anything that can undermine Trump and, the administration. And there's an element of the truth community, left-wing truthers. And then there's all the Charlie people who don't buy the official story and they want to see the truth come out. And they're not happy with Turning Point, just saying there's nothing to see here. The Turning Point is doing what Kash Patel did when he came out and said, yeah, Epstein did commit suicide and there is no Epstein file after all the bullshit he said before that. And so even if 80% of the people are like, this is bullshit, this is, so many people, I think it's well over 60%, it was at 60%, it's probably even more now, believe that the JFK official story is bullshit. They don't believe in the lone gunman. They, some part of it they don't believe. They don't believe in the magic bullet. There's a miracle bullet, a magic bullet, and Charlie Kirk thing as well. But even if 100% of Americans didn't believe it, they're like, fuck you, we're just pretend you guys aren't talking, pretend you guys didn't say anything, pretend that the people, like 100% of people are against it, and even if we acknowledge it, we're not going to change a fucking thing, and you can do nothing about it. Like, we've entered into, I've said this before, the fuck you period, where they're just like, fuck you. You guys are stealing our money. Yeah, fuck you. You know, you guys are doing these psychological operations. Yeah, fuck you. You know, they're just, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? That's like they're saying. They know that we're fucking impotent, right? They know what American people can't do shit about it, right? You know, they're limp dick. Like, there's there's nothing that people can do about any of this stuff, right? Like, we don't have a plan, and I've said this. You know, there was boycotting, which I think that window of opportunity has passed. But you can't vote it out. You can't vote somebody in that's going to be, there's every leader's compromised. I mean, Trump is the most compromised motherfucker we've seen. He's brought more of that shit in. Apparently, I just got like a message they put on YouTube where he's rolling out troops in Portland because of the ICE shit, the ICE bullshit. You know, he's bringing in troops, and he's doing this, all the stuff that the New World Order people wanted, and he's bringing it in, and the right-wing dopes are cheering him on because they don't want to admit that they got fucking duped by this guy. And by the time they do, it'll be too late. It's already too late. And so they don't care, and they're just going to push this thing on everybody, and they don't care whether that you like it or not because they don't have a fucking choice. We're bankrupt. We're so far in debt. There's moral depravity. The system's breaking down, and they're desperate. They're desperate. You know, don't have any solutions, and they're trying to push some kind of bogus plan that isn't going to work out. You know, most of the stuff that the controllers do fails, and they're getting more and more incompetent as time goes on. And so, you know, we've reached the point where there's the point of no return. Like I read that Whispers of the Brighter World messages. There's nothing you can do about it, right? You can neither stop time nor modify the system that's in place. So you can't stop time, you can't stop this thing from happening, and you can't change the corrupt system that governs our society and our world. And that's pretty much, you know, the size of it. And they know it, right? And so, you know, that's why people are just grabbing their piece of the pie, and they're so desperate in their failings, and they probably want you to, you know, my wife and I were talking about whether Paul McCartney was dead or not. Like I talked about how they had this guy Peter Best, and he was better looking than the other Beatles, and he was getting more fans, so they kicked him out, and they got Ringo Starr. And then there was Paul McCartney, so there's evidence that he supposedly died, and that you could play the Beatles album backwards, and it would say, Paul is dead. Remember, there was all this stuff in there. And they leak these things because people have this desire to go down rabbit holes, but they don't have the desire to reach the truth. They don't go up a rabbit hole, right? They don't go up an angel hole, right? They don't. That sounds like some kind of go up an angel hole. Sounds like something that would be on Urban Dictionary. But you know, they don't go upwards. They go downwards. People want to go down and, you know, comb through the filth, and they never get to the bottom because the truth isn't there. The truth is never at the bottom of the rabbit hole. It's with God. It's internalized, and it's, you know, something much more subtle. And the biggest thing is, you know, it's about you changing. If Jesus said anything that people didn't like, it's about everyone else has to change. Like, you know, everyone has to change, not everyone else. And that's always the message, that you have to change, and you have to give things up you don't want to give up. And you have to stop doing things you like doing, and you have to sacrifice some stuff. You know, sacrifice some of your egotistical pursuits, and people don't want to hear that shit. You know, no matter who's saying it, they don't want to hear it, and that's where we are now. So you have these conspiracies, you know, the Paul McCartney stuff, you know, the stuff with that TV show Lost, you know, unresolved mysteries. People want this. People want enigmas. They want to, you know, go down the rabbit hole. But, you know, in reality, they don't. There's something else that's much more subtle, and that's the internal connection to God. They want no part of that. I mean, that's, you know, I'm fully convinced of that. I mean, there's, you know, some spiritual seekers, but if it's 10% of the population, I mean, that's a generous figure. And, you know, I guess people who flirt with it, people who dabble with it, or whatever. The majority of people don't want any part of that. And now that's like, you're either going to do that, or you're either going to make this choice, or humanity is going to cease to exist. Like, we've reached that point. There's a point where, extinction is on the table. And, it's on the fucking table. Anyways, I did a voiceover with some comments. I'm going to put it here now. So here it is. Okay, it's after dinner here, Saturday, September 27th. I'm going to start this video here, and this video. I'm starting the video with the ending, which is kind of stupid thing to say. But I had a few comments to get to, and I wanted to get to some of them before I forgot what I was going to say. I have no idea what you've already watched because it changes every day. But here it says, this person, curious if Trump assassination was faked, how do you explain the death picture of shooter Matthew Crooks? Looks real to me. Okay, so, I don't know the level of stupidity that you have with people. And, I'm not saying that to demean people, just it's what we deal with. Because you can't come up with, I don't know, a million different explanations for that photo. Number one, Photoshop. Number two, they have no problem killing people. They got a corpse, they threw it on top of the roof. Number three, they just killed a dude up there. A patsy, right? I mean, it's just, they don't have a problem killing people. Number four, CGI. I mean, AI, fucking deep fake. There's so many things it could be. I mean, anything can be faked. Like the official story, there's no evidence that is, beyond question. Because they've done these things so many times, they've lied. They're constantly lying. All they ever do is lie. And they have these things that, even if they're organic, they use and manipulate, right? And we know for a fact that Trump did not have any real damage to his ear based on his conversation with Joe Rogan, all these other things, which I've shown you guys all have seen. That he put the big giant maxi pad on, and he had no stitches. His cut had already healed days earlier. He had nothing. There was no reason for him to have a Band-Aid on at all. He put on that maxi pad so he wouldn't look like a pussy because everyone saw his ear. They'd be like, what, you weren't even shot, you little bitch, right? And so that's the only factual thing we know in terms of him faking it. I mean, there's other things that are very suspect, but who gives a shit? Like, you're just silly. But if you can't come up with, I mean, it looks like a real photo to me, I'm convinced. Well, yeah, then why are you on my fucking channel? Because you need to go back to Romper Room, right? Like, you're not ready for this. It's not like this is, calculus or something. But you're not ready for it. All right, so the next comment here. I actually did a little bit with the microphone off. This is Kaboom's Charlie Shekels, Kirk, predictive programming, and Snake Eyes of Jezebel. My grandson's girlfriend was sitting right behind Corey when he was shot and killed in Butler. She could have been killed, so your fake comment is sick. Well, my great grandmother's third cousin's lover was sitting right behind Trump when nothing hit his ear, and she said it was fake. So you're, like what the fuck are you talking about, right? There's another person who wrote a comment. I meant to save it because it was a great comment. The guy, it was almost unintelligible, multiple misspelled words, sounded like it was written by a child, and the guy claimed to be a 33-degree Mason and is making claims about Freemasonry. And I'm like, they don't let somebody like that be a 33-degree Mason. I used to be a 33-degree Mason, the person said. They did, but they stopped, if you're going to make these claims, make sure that you show some verification of your bullshit, otherwise it's just a bullshit comment on the internet. Hey, Paul, very long listener. Maybe you recognize my name, maybe not. I don't know if I do or not. It's not in this thing. It's cut off. So I had an honest question, though. I know your stance on the Bible and stuff, but why do you figure they mock it so much? I know how you feel about the Bible and know exactly where you stand, so I'm not trying to call anyone out or anything like that. I'm just genuinely curious on the topic. I have questions about my take on the good book myself. They do not seem to, but they do seem to attack it. At least that's what I think I'm seeing constantly. I've never seen anybody attack the Bible. I mean, there's liberal atheist people who attack Christians and all religions and think religions are stupid and think that there's stupid shit in the Bible, which there is. Like stupid shit in every one of these religions. There's things that are not believable, and then there's things that are just dated. You know, these books are so old that, you know, I mean, they don't translate well to the there's things in there that have been disproven by science, right? And so there's that, but I've never heard anybody mock the Bible. Are you talking about politicians? I've never seen. I watch liberal media all the time. They don't mock the Bible because they would get crucified for that shit, and they want Christian followers. There's a lot of Democrats who are Christian believers. There's a lot. You know, my mom and dad, my grandparents were mostly Democrats. They voted. I think they always voted Democrat, and they were all Catholic, right? My mom, my grandmother specifically. And so, you know, there's more religious people on the right, but there's still, I don't know what you're talking about in terms of that. I don't hear anybody else say anything like I'm saying. And it says here, with all the shit going on lately, I've been sharing your videos with people and try to help people wake up because your combination of truth and humor, I feel like it helps to resonate with people. I'm not a religion person, but a lot of these rabbit hole conspiracy theories seem to always lead straight back to the Bible. I respect the hell out of your opinions and things. Hell, half what I know because of you. Hell, half of what I know is because of you. I don't know. I guess I feel like I need a spiritual crossroad. You maybe make more sense than almost anyone else, too, but you're not big on the Bible stuff, but it seems like that's the book that they live and die by. I don't know who you're saying. I never disrespect you or your work, Paul. This part just confuses me a little. I'm not offended by the freaking question. Love you, brother. I mean, I don't. That's what he said. I got to get to the Bible because I got this long, weird comment that just came in. So I'll get back to that. You say you're. Here it is. These all have the same kind of theme. You say you're into spirituality, then you mock her for being angry about the witches putting a hex on Charmy. You know it's real. The person meant Charlie, but wrote Charmy. And she's talking about Megyn Kelly being upset about some fucking witches that you get on Etsy. You know, I explain how curses work, but you have to, anything that you do in terms of spiritual warfare, you have to be close to God for it to work. And if you're living a godly life, you're immune from all that shit. And God has to protect you. You know, I should do this thing about how I know ways that you can sort of like wrap a bubble of divine love around yourself and your family. I mean, mostly family, loved ones, people like that. But even with that, you know, there is like psychic warfare that goes on, spiritual warfare. But someone on Etsy, you know, this weird thing with Jezebel, I mean, it's just silly. Like, you aren't as profound and spiritually ascended as you like to think you are to talk trash on others, double-digit people, FFs. Give me a break. Are you one of those double-digit people? I never claimed to be spiritual. I mean, I practice godly things and I pray for people and I do the sittings and the transmission and I act as a conduit for God. And people can feel the godly energy flowing through me. But I could do more. I've talked about this. You know, I do it a part-time thing. I would wish my commitment was more, but I'm kind of demotivated because of everything going on in the world. But I'm not wanting to be one of those saints or somebody like that. Like, I do it because I enjoy doing it, and I feel like I owe the Sajmark system and the godly, the God work that's been done on me. Like, I owe something, and I like to, give back or whatever. So, but there's no thought of me being spiritual or nice or, any of those things. I never claimed to be any of those things. I can be nice, I can be kind, but I also am not, right? And so those things haven't balanced out. I don't know which one of these. Let me look at these comments before. Sometimes when I do a screenshot, there's two comments, and it was the top one. So this one says, the blood on Nicolas Cage's hand and the dude got shot had nothing to do with Trump's fake assassination, bro. I don't even like Trump. but that's reaching so fucking far, trying to make everything about Trump. You sound kind of obsessive. It's the same person that said earlier the stuff about me being not spiritual. I just realized because I can read that name. Well, it does have to do with it to this extent. Trump's claimed in multiple interviews, multiple places, that he heard the bullet and then he felt something on his ear. He touched his ear and he looked at his hand and he saw blood. And I think he might have thought they were going to CGI some in. They was going to deep fake it, but they didn't. And so there's no blood on his hand. But in the Nicolas Cage movie, he had blood on his ear and he touched it and it was on his hand and he looked down and he saw it on his hand. And so it's exactly like Trump, except he had the fake blood on his hand where Trump had to have those guys maul him, those Secret Service guys, and knock his shoes off and squirt ketchup on his ear. You know, I mean, just silly. Who gives a shit? So this is the last one. This is what I want to talk about in terms of Jesus here. In December, this is not the one. Here's the one here. So that one is something somebody made a comment I want to look into. This is, why did Charlie Kirk demand a Doge audit 100 on 100 million TPUSA? You are definitely greatly deceived, but just like the Apostle Paul, as you have mentioned, you can most definitely be used for the master's plan. Let me drop this truth bomb on you first. You know, when you start off your comment like that, like no one's going to take you seriously. Hey, let me drop this truth bomb on you, bro. You're deceived, but I know so much more about this than you do. And so, first, on you first. The Bible is Black history book. It is not a religious book. You will find white people nowhere in the Bible, or I say Europeans or Caucasians nowhere in the Bible, especially before the flood. Now go do your research on that. If you want to know more, get back in touch with me, because the Bible, as you know it now, which is originally the book of scriptures, something a lot of you white folks and those who are blind cannot understand, that this is why your era is so many ways in trying to read and understand, because it was not written for you. It was written to his people. The N-word, written to his people, the N-word. Just Google another Google, can I say Negro land? Then Google Jerusalem 1925. Then please get back with me on that. No, thanks. You know, why don't you listen to my point of view? You know, I don't believe Jesus looked like the Jesus we see, the white Jesus. You know, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus that they put out there. I mean, I can't understand how there's a possibility that could happen. When 2,000 years ago in that part of the world, there was no people with blue eyes and blonde hair, right? But who knows exactly what those people look like? I mean, we're talking about 2,000 years ago. But they were, you know, darker skin. They could have been black. They could have been Middle Eastern, you know, brown, whatever it is. I don't know. Doesn't matter, right? Like, I don't have any prejudice, because the people that I think are the most spiritual that I've met are the masters of the Sajmark system, who are, you know, Indian, dark-skinned Indian people. I don't have some white guy prejudice that somehow Jesus was white and blue-eyed and that's why he's the best guy. Like, you know, I don't believe in any of that shit. But that's not important. What I'm saying about the Bible is it's not a very good book. It is, you know, it's been edited. I mean, there's human sacrifices and animal sacrifices and weird shit, and King David cutting off 200 foreskins of the Philistines. Is that the whatever it is, right? There's all this weird shit in it that's dated, that's not spiritual, not godly. They don't give you a method how to connect to God, the divinity within you. It's not a good religion. There are good Christian saints, and Jesus reached, you know, a higher level. Jesus is a part of the meditation that I do, right? And I'm coming from a place where my meditation, the Sajmark meditation, not because it's like something to do with me, it has nothing to do with me. I was just lucky enough to have good experiences with it, and I stuck with it, right? And so, I know what Christianity. I did Catholicism and these prayer meetings with my mom, and there was some benefit to it. I don't think it's completely not beneficial. I am grateful for my mom and my grandmother's prayers, the rosary prayers. I'm grateful for the nuns that came to my mom's prayer meetings, and they prayed for my family and me, and I know those things helped. I don't have any problem with my Catholic upbringing, or I'm not bad at Jesus or the Bible, or I didn't have some bad experiences with Catholicism or Christianity. In fact, Christianity was instrumental. Christian people were instrumental in my family homeschooling. There are a lot of good things Christian people have done. There are a lot of good Christians out there. And I'm just saying the Bible isn't as good as people think it is. There's better books, much better books, and they're just books. If you want to be a spiritual person, or if you want to connect with God, you got to connect with God. And you can't do it through some bullshit religion. Because they're using their authority to block your connection to God and brainwash you into believing that divinity isn't within you, so that they can, control you and have religious power. And I've said that over and over again. And so that's the important piece. And I know that from my own experiences, which most people haven't had. And I was lucky enough to have them. I'm not saying in any, way where I'm feeling like I'm better than people. But because I've had those things, I have a whole different level of perception that other people don't have. And so, I don't care if you believe me or not. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to convince people. I'm not trying to sell anything. I don't even know what, use this is to people. And so I know that it's truth, and I know that other people, you're not going to hear it anywhere else. And so I say it on a regular basis. But it's not like I have some, really negative feelings about the Bible. I think it's better that people do at least something that has to do with God than do nothing. But sometimes doing the wrong thing creates more problems than good. So I don't even know. It's not for me to say, and I don't want to say. Even if it was for me to say, it's for other people to find out for themselves, right? But I'm just giving information the way I see it. And so I just, it's like everything else. I just say what I see. I don't expect myself to be perfect or 100% right, but I'm not wrong about the Bible, right? It's not what people think it is. It's not the Word of God. That's just some bullshit thing you heard by your religion, right? Every religion could say their book is the Word of God, the only Word of God, that their guy is the only godly person. There's been so many saints and higher developed souls here. That isn't the problem. The problem is that other people won't follow them and do what they did and become what they became. That's the real problem. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. Its power mile definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.